space that I would love to introduce to you is this idea of alternate reality. We're talking here about transmedia storytelling, using the real world as a means to augment a digital interactive experience. There's been a game in the 90s called Majestic. And what Majestic, Neil Young was the designer for it.
Whom?
And Neil Young. He went on to start NG Moko, if you remember.
Yes, NG Moko.
It was bought by a Japanese company called DNA.
DNA.
And right now, Neil Young runs a company called Network that attempts to be basically a publisher of mobile games. They're currently UA specialists, and they have a game called Legendary that is highly successful. They combined match 3 with kind of strategic combat.
Cool.
Anyway, really smart guy, worked at EA for many years. Anyway, the person itself is not important. What is important is Majestic, the game that he created. This game in the 90s was attempting to extend the experience by faxing you information.
Wow.
And calling you. So at the time it was like, kind of the peak of technology to be able to do that. Majestic failed terribly, part of the reason being that they couldn't get the tech to run as well as they wanted to. So the faxes were not coming in, and the phone call was not very clear, or anyway. But there is this potential that I feel for a game that interacts with you through atypical means. You made a game that is transforming your actual life as opposed to being a break from your life. A game that will communicate some information to you through the internet, emails, through phones, through social media. It just kind of seeps into your life and starts to alter the patterns in your life. And there's a really amazing novel called The Magus, by John Fowles, that effectively talks about how this person's life experience was altered by inputs that he received from the outside world. And there's, you'll see later on in my presentation, there's also a pretty famous movie with Michael Douglas. It came out in the 90s called The Game. Yeah. Have you guys seen The Game? Yeah. All right. This is alternate reality. You are effectively altering a person's view of reality through a gamified experience that envelops that person. I love that movie. Okay, so there's actually an entire academic field in alternate reality, and they have some principles, and I found those to be very interesting. So I'm going to read them to you. Storytelling as archaeology, platformless narrative, designing for a hive mind. A whisper is sometimes louder than a shout. This is not a game aesthetic. Real life as a medium, collaborative storytelling, and not a hoax. These are actual things that happen to actual people.
Wow.
And I simply included, this picture really relates to the previous section. The game, like the Magus, is a reference for alternate reality. But I wanted to tell you guys a bit about Internet of Things.
Right.
I was telling you that, before I joined Amber, I was working at Samsung, and we're actually on the lookout for game studios that are using IoT devices. I don't think that Samsung is still looking for that. And the IoT hype has stabilized quite a bit right now. It's been kind of hard to integrate those devices into your home in a comprehensive way. But they are there, and they will continue to get better, and the platforms will continue to get more user-friendly. So here's the opportunity. Imagine a game that can interact with your smart home.
Right.
Your windows can open and close. Your AC temperature fluctuates. So imagine you playing Silent Hill, and you're stepping into a room, a creepy-ass room, and all of a sudden your AC blows cold air. It will definitely enhance the experience.
Yeah, for sure.
You can make your lights flicker. You can make your lights change color. again, like your entire house becomes a haunted house
Right.
while you're playing Resident Evil. The TV turns on and starts playing a recorded message. You know, wow, so creepy. You come at home, back, the TV starts, and there's like this ethereal voice and face telling you something, revealing some personal information for you. IoT devices could assist in LARP narratives. Are you guys familiar with LARP? Have you heard of the term before? Large action role playing?
Yes.
It's usually like on the lame spectrum of geekiness.
Yeah.
Like when people like dress in medieval armor.
Right.
I don't know if you have an example of that. Maybe there are like some Aztec like battle enactments in Mexico, but usually the world over there's some historical enactment. And by the way, I don't need to make fun of it because it's actually quite.
It's okay.
I'm kind of on that spectrum.
Right. We all are. So
I never done it, but I could see myself.
I could see me jumping in, right?
There's medieval events.
Yeah.
People go and go play for a weekend.
Oh, in Mexico?
Yeah.
Okay, great. What do they usually, what kind of medieval
Well,
enactments do they do? Is it like a Renaissance fair type of thing? Or?
they have tournaments, just they just control the tournaments, and there are some that go in Viking armor, even some that dress up as knights, and there are different coats with food from the period and stuff like that. So it's a section of forest or park.
A medieval setting. That's really cool, and they're very. We're talking yesterday a little bit about Vampire the Masquerade. They are LARP events in that universe. Right? So basically, you have people dressing like vampires. It's all carved out, like that. I don't know. The medieval stuff appeals to me a bit more because it seems to be historically grounded. The other stuff is just like theatrical stuff. But that being said, the IoT devices could assist in enhancing the LARP experience.
Right.
I said it can simulate a haunted house, a horror experience. They can guide the scavenger hunt. You get to a particular place in a city, and your phone buzzes, and there's a mysterious message that says, "Look at the red door to your right, and go in, you adventurer." And you go in there, and there's there's some like lights and
A motion sensor triggers stuff.
Okay. And you can extend the experience of a scavenger hunt to an entire neighborhood or to a city.
So you can mobilize a lot of people?
You can mobilize a lot of people, or you can give people a lot of ground to cover. In my mind, exploring a city can be more fun if it's sort of a scavenger hunt. You go to point on a
For
set
sure.
itinerary, you discover the city, but at the same time you're playing the game, and you're evolving that experience. So yeah, a little bit more about LARP. It's really augmented reality plus cosplay plus interactive theater. We kind of covered this, so I'm not going to belabor it. Flicksings. That is straight out of Ready Player One. Just reading the book and I'm like, oh, this sounds pretty innovative. In the film, in the book and the film, this is a simulation where the player's avatar plays a movie character. So you're effectively playing a character in a movie. And in Ready Player One, it's basically like you're slavishly following the lines of the original movie. But imagine that you can deviate from that and become a true character in a movie and have your own experience of it. There have been this idea of interactive movies is very fertile and not very well explored. There have been some attempts at it. The first attempt was Kino Automat by Radusz Cinchera, a Czech guy. In 1974, there was Wild Gunman that Nintendo made. know, 1983 was Dragon's Lair, an FMV cartoon by Don Bluth,
Impressive.
which was actually the first commercial release of an interactive movie. And of course, the most famous example, Bandersnatch. Right?
Yeah,
Bandersnatch is
crazy.
currently the kind of gold standard for interactive movies.
Netflix.
Yeah, I think it's right to be explored. There's not a real market for it. It still feels blue ocean. But in theory, Netflix will publish your movie.
Right.
Movie, right? So it's not out there. And yes, this is combining film and game making. Right? I'm assuming, yes, of course, you
Kind of
can
blurry.
make it in 3D and 3D, the old CGI, but it's probably less expensive to film it.
Yeah, like live action combined with decision making.
Yeah. It's like heavy rain in a movie. To use an example close to your heart. Cool. Science crowdsourcing. I think we're kind of scratching the surface here too. There have been quite a few attempts at gamifying scientific problems with really good results, what we call citizen science. There's a Center for Game Science at the University of Washington, so this is another academic field.
Nice.
In 2008, there was a game called Folded, which is probably the most famous example of science crowdsourcing. They were doing protein folding for HIV. And protein folding is extraordinarily complex, and computers are kind of failing at doing a good job with that. No, mind you, this was 2008. Probably AI now is more advanced and can do the job better. But at the time, they actually needed real-life human beings to do the folding, to fold stuff in the protein structure. And so people were doing that, and they were submitting their unique folded patterns into this massive database, which were helping the researchers. There was another one in 2010 called Philo, aligning DNA sequences to solve evolutionary relationships. In 2011, Eterna, which was predicting RNA folding structures. Basically the same concept. These games are not very fun to play, unfortunately, but they are useful, so you feel like you're actually contributing, adding value.
This is something like the early stages of PS3 was doing, that you could let your PS3 on,
Yes.
and your PS3 connected to Harvard, I think, and
Yes.
started processing information for
Yeah.
them.
That's definitely a science crowdsourcing. That basically you're crowdsourcing, you're offering your
CPU
spare
time,
CPU
yeah.
time, right? It was like SETI, It was a SETI research. What I think the opportunity is here, it's doing a bit more than that. You as a human, you're interacting with the system, and they're helping science directly, not just donating your CPU time.
Right.
Even though that's valuable too, of course, but you can do more than that.
So the Apple efforts wouldn't fit there, right? Because the technology is the one actually doing the whole thing. With the iWatch, and now that they're taking like measurements of all kinds of things, even when you drop and when you fall, and it just triggers stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty close as a system, as a platform, but still.
You're not using your intelligence to solve science problems.
All right.
In that sense, you're a test subject as opposed to a
Yeah.
scientist.
Okay, great.
And the example that I provided with the folded, for example, you're
Yeah,
actually
you
folding
have got to
protein
do
and
stuff.
trying to map it in a chemically viable pattern.
Okay.
So you're doing work that maybe computers are not able to do, which probably is going to lessen in the coming years as the computers will start to do more and more of what we consider human
Function.
function. So business simulation.
Ooh, I love that
I like this one.
game. Yeah, game
There's a
dev.
lot of opportunity here.
Game dev diary.
Because enterprise trading systems suck. Like if any of you have worked like a major corporation and had to take like a sexual harassment course, oh my god, it's so painful to go through that exercise over and over again. And you think, man, that stuff would be totally gamified in a really interesting fashion. It'd be like some sort of interactive theater experience. Basically, we can use our skill. I feel that we can use our skill as game makers to make training so much more fun and immersive and exciting. There's been quite a bit of that, and in the game space itself, there have been games that have dealt with, you know, the travails of creating, to being a game maker, right? So there's Game Dev Story in '97 and Game Dev Tycoon in 2012 that kind of speak to that, you know, how hard it is to make games. And I recommend that you try, at least take a look at these games. It's really interesting. Also, I feel in terms of if we're innovating, we look at technologies, but I think we can look at another area of opportunity. Games that deal with the human condition in a very profound and revealing way. Currently, games like this are kind of in the art games category, pursued by indie developers, but they stride across domains that are not commonly being explored. You know, sexuality. There's this game called Dysphoria by Anna Anthony. She was transitioning. She was F to M, I believe, or M to I, one of those. But she was transitioning. She was transsexual, and she had severe body dysphoria. That's basically what the game is about, which is this condition where you don't feel at home in your own skin. And she created a game around that experience. Quite interesting, and it is revealing and it is insightful. And hopefully it helps us be more understanding towards that.
What's happening?
Mortality,
The Dragon.
Dragon Cancer by UNETE Games, which dealt with the story of a very old person that is in terminal stages of cancer. Misery, This War of Mine by 11-Bit Studios, which is probably the most commercially successful example on this list. 11-Bit Studios, Polish studio, they made this game that dealt with the Kosovo Civil War. Well, it was the Yugoslavian Civil War, and more particularly with the siege of Kosovo. So what happened, this is 95, I believe, the Serbian army encircled the city of Kosovo. It was a city of, I don't know, 500,000 people, fairly sizable city, in Croatia, and sieged it for almost a year, and it was horrendous. It was unspeakable conditions that don't fit the modern world. You know, thousands upon thousands died. There were nightly bombardments with heavy artillery. The people were entrapped, so they had no place to run because the Serbian army was around the city. And that created very unique conditions in Kosovo. The people became brutes because there was no food, there was mass starvation, there was no electricity at night, there was no heating. People were reverting to this like very, I don't know, I hate to use the word, but primitive set of needs and desires. It was all about survival. And the game captures the state of human misery. And it's a very hard game, by the way, to play. If you haven't tried it, I recommend it. It's actually quite fun from a game mechanic, like from a design perspective, to try to make it. You know, when you think you have everything you need, you know, you finally procured your food, your fuel, your guns to be able to defend yourself from looters, you're becoming depressed. And unfortunately, it's almost impossible to cure that.
Wow.
In the game. Like, once you're depressed, you're
fucked.
You don't want to do anything. You're basically sitting in bed all day. And in the process that I described of actually acquiring your foodstuff puts you in moral conundrums all the time. There's a child that has a piece of bread. Are you going to beat the child and take the bread? If that is the difference between starving and enduring another day or another couple of days. So anyway, this game presents moral dilemmas like that all the time. And if you take the high road, by the way, you will die. That's the unfortunate. Anyway.
What do you mean with the high road?
Don't beat the child to take the bread.
Oh.
Moral.
Grieving. Left to my own devices.
I don't know that one.
I don't like that. I mean, I know of it, but I haven't played. Relationships Facade, which I played. It's a great game, by the way.
It is? Is it a computer game?
It's
Or
a computer
a
game.
mobile?
It has the worst graphics ever.
Florence.
It's very blocky, kind of.
Fucking Florence was awesome. Did you play Florence?
Yes, of course, I loved it.
I cried. It's the first game that ever makes me cry.
I was like, wow, like this game is so short.
45 minutes or something like that, right? Like,
Not even, anyway, half an hour.
yeah, actually, there's this conundrum about if it's a game or an interactive, like, novel or whatever it is, but it's interactive, right?
Experience. It's gamified. It's a gamified story. Yeah.
Well, I just enjoyed it like crazy.
Yeah, I know it has a beautiful story, and ultimately that's what matters, not $100 a game.
Right.
Nice.
And finishing it like super quick, although it's quick. It
Right,
gives.
so what Facade is about is that you are, entering an apartment and interacting with a couple. They are your friends. They're having marital problems, and depending on your reactions to what they're saying or doing, by the way, you can type your messages to them, and the computer has a rudimentary system of understanding what you're saying, and that's basically how you communicate. It's very static, like nothing much happened, but you are interacting with this couple, and the idea is to help them like get over their marital issues and not cause a further rupture. And it's like it has many different outcomes. So depending on what you say or do, there are many different outcomes that can be produced during the course of playing the game. So it has a lot of replayability, even though it's basically the same scene.
Cool.
Very, I don't know, I think an interesting game to check out.
The human condition.
But what I feel is the holy grail of game making, and the thing that is still unfulfilled to a large extent, is creating a fully functional metaverse. So the metaverse was imagined by Neil Stephenson in Snow Crash in 1992. That's where the term originates from. But there was actually a game in 1975 that attempted this colossal cave adventure. This was a mod. You're just like texting your way through this very large universe. And of course, there have been a ton of MMOs. The first MMO in 1986 called Air Warrior by Kesmai. Neverwinter Nights in 1991. First to use graphics. Everything before that, it was basically just text and zeros. 1995 Meridian 59 by Archetype Interactive, which was the studio of John Hanke of Niantic, interesting enough. First to use 3D graphics. And then, of course, the mother of them all,
The World of Warcraft.
By Blizzard. And I still think that with the advent of all the technologies that we've talked about in this presentation, we can create a fully immersive metaverse. I think that is the promise of game making. Ever increasing immersive experiences until we get to the point where we can manufacture realities that are built entirely in our own imaginations. If there's something to aspire for, it's that. Thank you. I think this ends our class. I wanted to take a moment to make sure that you don't have any lingering questions or observations about the class itself. As I've mentioned a couple of times already, all the materials that you have seen during the course will be shared in editable format, so you can make full use of them for your future careers. And of course, you have my email, mihai@amberstudio.com. Please write me at any time. Please friend me on Facebook. Let's keep in touch. This is the beginning of our journey together, not the end. And thank you for giving me your undivided attention and support during the class. It was a fabulous experience to be here at Tech in Ciudad de Mexico. con mis amigos mexicanos. Muchas gracias. Are we good with questions? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday we slightly talked about the political climate here in Latin America. Is that a kind of trend that we can actually include in this list? At a certain level, all Latin America is passing through a rough state. So there are many people interested in that kind of topics.
Yeah, and not just Latin America. Eastern Europe is going through some rough times as well. There's some extremist regimes in Poland and Hungary. We just had a party in power in Romania that was openly fighting against anti-corruption efforts. They basically were fighting to be corrupt and to get their bodies out of jail and to make sure that the laws don't allow the court system to put their bodies in jail. If you're talking about games playing a political role in educating and mobilizing, I absolutely think it should be one of the things that are on the list. And if you have that, to me feels like very innovative and very blue ocean. Now, you're not bereft of some comparisons. You know, there have been some attempts to make political games, like for example, games that simulate presidential campaigns in the US. But to my knowledge, there hasn't been a standout experience so far. So yes. Cool. Thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.